Hi everyone, I'm Daniel, and today I'm going to take a look at 3 decks that I've been playing outside of my channel. In fact, I do play a lot of Arkham that I don't just record and put here on YouTube for you. Some of it is in paper, some of it is playing with a few of my friends online. Anyway, these are some things that you haven't seen before, and I thought I would revisit them and talk a little bit about these decks. So let's get right into it. The first one we're going to look at is going to be a Kohaku deck. This was played with 3 players, a custom campaign called, I think, A Matter of Britain is the one, and it was a fun Curse and Bless deck, of course, with Kohaku, but we also had a parallel Zoe who did lots and lots and lots with Bless tokens, and then a Roland Banks who did some things with Curse tokens. So yeah, 3-player. I was kind of the clover of the 3. We also played on hard difficulty, which I don't usually do, but sometimes I do, of course, for the custom content because the campaigns are easier than hard on the normal official campaigns. So what do I want to talk about for this one? Well, I was mostly getting clues and mostly doing it through this Eye of Chaos. I don't know if you've played with this card from Innsmouth, but it works really well in Kohaku because he can put a lot of curse tokens in with the other things here. And, you know, getting the +2 with this upgraded one for an easier job of getting the clues to pass the test. But even if you don't pass the test, maybe you'll reveal a curse token. And if so, you get to discover clues anyway, especially for this upgraded one where you can discover clues from a connecting location, or you can put a charge on Eye of Chaos and just use this forever. I found in 3-player, at least in this group, that there was a little bit overkill. Like, I was often looking for clues and we just cleared them off so quickly that extra charges on this was not really that big of a deal. Mostly that's what this whole thing was built around, trying to get the Eye of Chaos to work, and it did. The first couple of scenarios, though, it really didn't. And it was sort of a bummer to burn about, I guess, 6 XP, because I have down the rabbit hole you'll see here, on the Eye of Chaos, because it just kept failing the test, and that was kind of bad. So you need to figure out a way to make those curse tokens actually not hurt, and that's part of why I put the Blasphemous Covenant in. And what else? Oh yeah, the ritual candles helped out with the curses too, because under the taboo form, this just is any symbol. So you get +1 basically for every curse, and sometimes I had 2 of these out. Sometimes I had his signature, but mostly we were just rocking with the ritual candles most of the time. The accessory slots, we can talk about those. Never played with Lucky Penny before. Here it is, if you haven't seen it before. And I didn't realize that it's a forced effect. I mean, obviously it is once you think about it. It'd be busted if you could just choose when or not to use this. But when you reveal either a bless or curse, you flip a coin, and if it is heads, it's a bless, tails is a curse. If you treat a bless as a curse, draw a card. And that was kind of fun because we just ended up having way too many blesses in the bag because of parallel Zoe's just crushing it with adding bless tokens in the bag. So this was like a cute way to add curses into the bag. Not really, but something like that. But the problem is it is so annoying to do this every single time that you reveal a bless or curse, especially since there was often like 8 to 10 of them in the bag. Very likely that I was doing this multiple times per test. Yeah, not a whole lot of fun, but it was kind of an interesting idea to see what this card does. I think it was like okay effective, but I probably wouldn't play it again. I think after a while in this campaign, I specifically didn't put into play because I was so annoyed with playing it, but there you go. However, I also put in a Decorated Skull. This deck does nothing with enemies, but in 3-player, I was able to follow around Roland or Zoe enough to get this thing charged up a lot. Like, I'm pretty sure there were some scenarios where I spent 9 charges off of this with just the 3 actions, and refilling your hand and getting them into resources is huge. I almost felt like I was playing a big money Kohaku deck. And what would I do with that money? I had 1 copy of Arcane Studies, and I really liked having this card just to make sure I could hit some of the thresholds, especially on hard, where you're worried about, okay, what if I get a -5 or a -2, a curse into a -5? Like, can you go up 7? And this card lets you pick your spot. saying that instead of saying my cards in play only let me go up 2 or 3 or 4 or something, you hit the breakpoints more easily with Arcane Studies or similar cards. Those are the 2 stats I'm using anyway. Here's St. Hubert's Key, obviously, for the same idea. Rest of the deck is pretty much your bog standard curse deck. Living Ink, all of McBride 2 basically are making sure you hit those symbol tokens all the time, and then refilling the Living Ink every time was pretty easy to do. On the event side, we've got kind of your normal good stuff. Faustian Bargain for adding curses and getting money. Read the Signs. This is the upgraded one, which you can't see here on the screen, but it's the same as the original, except for you return to your hand if you reveal a symbol token, which I was basically always doing. I was thinking very hard about putting Prophetic in here, and I didn't get to it, although I probably could have. I mean, you can see here, 59 experience is crazy. And then the rest of the stuff is pretty normal. I would say that this is a good down the rabbit hole deck because I was able to upgrade basically everything. However, I didn't realize at the beginning, I sort of slipped my mind, that Kohaku does not get level 4 and 5 Mystic cards. So I was hoping to put more into this Living Ink, but I couldn't. I can only go up to 6 boxes. So would this have been better with Arcane Research? I don't know. I think this was fine as it was, but it did sort of stink somewhere in the middle where I was adding, paying extra XP for things like the Decorated Skull, for the Lucky Penny, for this Rite of Equilibrium, which actually did something. This was a cute combo with the Seal of the Elders, which I'll show you in a second. This one allowed me to remove a bunch of tokens in order to heal horror from cards. And those cards sometimes was Roland, but also sometimes it was the Seal of the Elders. Let me make this actually so you can see everything now. Yeah, this is a bunch of extra stuff from the custom campaign. All right, Seal of the Elders, if you're not familiar with this card, you still can't see everything, is going to give you these extra allies in play. They're not allies, they're summons. If you are able to reveal 2 curses or 2 blesses in the same test. And I did do that, I think, once. And it was fun. Was it necessary? Absolutely not. But it was fun. So yeah, the Keeper of the Key. Oh, can we bring Keeper of the Key up? Maybe we can. Just do a quick search for that. Okay. Yeah, this guy here has 4 sanity, and when a blessed token is revealed during a skill test at your location, you deal it 1 horror and discover a clue at your location or connecting location. I got to heal all 3 horror off of this before it went away, and then do it again. So keep getting these fast clues. Like I said, didn't feel like there was enough clues in this campaign to really make me stress out about anything. So the deck had sometimes just, what do I do? And in 3 or 4 player even, I'd like to have a few things dealing with enemies, but that wasn't really a huge problem either. So we had a pretty good time going through this campaign, and I think the Kohaku deck did very well, even though at the beginning it was a little bit of a rough start. But once you get a ton of XP into your deck, surprise, surprise, you start really doing well. You might wonder about the charisma here. There's only 1 ally. There's a few story allies I added. That's what that was doing. And yeah, okay, that is Kohaku. So let's move on to a couple more decks that I played. This next one is going to be a Rita Young deck. And this was played in 2-player Return to the Path to Carcosa. And that is basically just getting rid of enemies as much as I possibly could. There was very little as far as getting clues. There's just the copy of 2 copies of Look What I Found level 2, which I like to put in 2-player. It's just, it makes things go very smooth. Partly this is because I was playing with a Daisy Walker who could clear the table pretty easily with clue getting. So not a big deal to have to add in too much. It's Carcosa, so there's a ton of extra weaknesses here. And that's the only thing I want to point out is, like, my goodness, this deck had some card draw problems simply because I kept drawing weaknesses. we did play, as you can see, the Carnivale side scenario as well, and we did not win, so we got an extra weakness. So this is gosh, how many weaknesses here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weaknesses in this deck. Standalone play I find to be really rough, right? With all these extra weaknesses. I mean, generally it doesn't matter because you're able to get through it, but it depends on what the weaknesses are, and they're just kind of annoying. Path to Carcosa just does that. It just gives you extra weaknesses. So what's to talk about for this one? It's a pretty basic Meat Cleaver Peter Sylvester deck with the Fire Extinguisher, but with the addition of Dirty Fighting, I think Rita does very well with these cards. I've got a permanent Scrapper also to try to pass tests. Anything else that was kind of neat? Brute Force I put in this deck. As you'll see in the next one, it's not there. Long Shot was pretty cool because this can be to your evasions. I was just trying to find clever ways to deal 3 or 4 damage to enemies without taking too many actions doing so. And Rita now, with the full card pool, can do it. If you haven't played Rita in a while, I recommend it. It's actually a great time. The elaborate distractions were fine, so this was really just to make sure I could maybe get rid of some enemies that were not at my location or engage with Daisy. That's kind of what they were doing there. I probably would have gotten rid of them for something else if I really needed to, but otherwise the events are just economy, and we just needed to get to some weapon as soon as possible. And I never had a problem dealing with that. Daisy helps too. I find that if you're playing in a team like that, you should take advantage of having a Daisy Walker on your team. Like, you can run fewer weapons because you'll get them. And for Rita, if you don't get them, you are the weapon. You can have some enemy management by just having 5 agility and dealing a damage upon the evasion. So honestly, this deck worked out very well. I would probably, in the future, I don't know, maybe another upgraded weapon. I almost felt like the Fire Extinguisher only giving +1 combat was not enough. It was almost better to have the Meat Cleaver and take the Horror, even if Peter wasn't out. Sometimes in Path to Carcosa, you don't actually want to do this. And check out this random base of weakness I had since the beginning. After you take 1 or more Horror, take 1 direct damage. I honestly was scared of taking damage in this campaign. She's got 9 health, and I was frequently concerned because of Psychosis. You basically couldn't use Meat Cleaver too much. So like Fire Extinguisher is better, right? For that reason. But then I felt like I was missing on the extra combat boost for having 3 or fewer remaining sanity with the Meat Cleaver. So this Psychosis was absolutely brutal, and I basically had Daisy get rid of it as much as I could. That's why the bandages lasted so long, and this Precious Memento actually is the one that heals damage, which is so funny. So I could put damage from other sources on here. Yeah, but yeah, we won the campaign, and it was a tight finish. We played the Conviction version of Path to Carcosa. The Return to adds a little bit more spice to Dim Carcosa, but we got there. It was just very close. And that was with Joe, by the way, who's playing with me on Dream Eaters on the channel. You may have been watching those. I recommend it. He's been a lot of fun to play with. Last one that I'll talk about today is another Survivor deck. Sorry, this one is Silas Marsh, and this was played in a 3-player context. So the other people on the team were a Carson, let me just get rid of this here so it looks a little nicer on the screen, a Carson Sinclair and a Min T-Fan. Those were the 3 playing through Edge of the Earth. And honestly, that is the most I've ever crushed Edge of the Earth, which is not the hardest campaign. It really isn't. However, we basically did everything. We got not all of the seals at the end, but very close to it. But we trounced a lot of those scenarios that really ask you to do some stretch goals. Like, we got every single key in City of the Elder Things. We got all the supplies up the mountain. And you look at this deck for Silas, and you say, there's 2 weapons. There's 1 fire axe and 1 harpoon. Okay, was Carson doing damage? Not really. There's a few story assets like the dynamite that we used, and I think he had elaborate distractions in his deck, which was really clutch. But I mean, many of you probably look at my decks and say, my goodness, what is in this deck? How do you actually do anything with one weapon? You just find it. Honestly, you mulligan hard, you use help from other people, like a Min that helps you find things, and a Carson that also helps you find things, and you'll just get everything. In a 3-player game with a Carson who basically didn't do much other than commit cards, like things like Long Shot or Vicious Flow, you can do a lot with just skills. Honestly, like having the extra damage from Fire Axe or a Sea Change Harpoon, really good. And you want that eventually, but you still can get a lot done without having those things in play. It sounds so antithetical to advice that people give out, but in higher player counts, I run fewer weapons. I just trust that, especially with a investigator like Silas who can evade, that you can get there. There's not even brute force in here. I just had strong-armed Grizzled, which was in the Rita deck too, by the way. I'll talk about that card in a second, but you just commit cards, you pass tests, and you use other things at your disposal. Having the extra action from Carson is so big too. So I don't necessarily recommend running only one weapon plus the one that comes with your card, but sometimes you can just power through, and this was 8 scenarios and it was never a problem. So yeah, it's just a difference between playing 2 and 3 player, and there's a lot of other things in this deck that get clues. So yeah, Min got probably 2/3 of the clues and I got the other third. Yeah, with Dark Horse level 5, with Madame Lebranche, with a Mariner's Compass, you can get a lot of clues as Silas. He's pretty much a flex, in my opinion, in the right team. And this team really, leaned into things like having usage of Plucky, True Understanding, just committing things just to basic investigate. It's not here in the deck list, but I had the item in Edge of the Earth that lets you investigate at base 5. So like these things let you get ahead on the game. So yeah, I recommend playing Silas in a way that makes him use his ability on not just combat. If you're in the right team, if you're in a team where there is no one else dealing with enemies in any way, shape, or form, then yeah, you don't do this. You don't need to. But in our case, where Carson wasn't doing a whole lot, this was the way to make up for the lack of clues for the third person. Other cool things. The Hunting Jacket. I love this card. Well, you can't see it here now, but what this card, that's better, does is lets you basically put those extra cards in your hand, which I feel like Silas often has. By the way, no Unrelenting here either. Still had tons of cards. And get resources back out of it. Even as a Dark Horse, it's totally okay to get resources. After a while, maybe the first scenario or so, I stopped having that worry of taking resources during upkeep, which Dark Horse, lets you decide not to take the resources because you want to stay at 0 to get the skill boosts. Don't do it. Just spend the resources. just spend the resources on the skill tests and you will pass them. I put in 9 of the rods at the end just for fun, and I don't know if the card's that great, but it was kind of neat to fish for encounter cards that I liked better. I passed so many treacheries. That's what True Understanding was doing in here too. And it's nice to have a, skills with wild symbols. So when you do draw the Elder Sign, or you force it with Eucatastrophe, this card, a little bit of a nombo with the Dark Horse. I probably shouldn't have put it in, but Silas's Elder Sign is so good that I did anyway. I only put it in towards the end. Yeah. What else is worth talking about here? Yeah, recurring things with your Elder Sign is kind of a huge part of the game plan if you can take enough tests, I think. And having the opportunity to pick up like a quick thinking and get extra actions out of that too is pretty great. I put in Persistence. I don't think this did much. I feel like it should be good in Silas, but it didn't do enough for me. The card slots, I think, are at a premium, and later I felt like I probably could have just remove this from my deck and put something else in, except for I had Grizzled. And Grizzled does so much for 2 card slots, right? So I put a bunch of stuff on this one. Okay, I'll bring the screen out again so you can see we added Monster, Hazard, Terror, and Eidolon, and gave it the ability to return if you were to draw one of those cards. Let's see, which one is that? Always Prepare. This is, I always try to put this on because it's crazy. I have this card in Rita, and the only thing I did was different was I put on Nemesis to try to attach it to elite enemies at the end. And if you know Dim Carcosa, you'll know why I did that. But this was a, I don't know, it's crazy to just keep picking up this skill card from your discard pile all the time. And then it gives you, +3. It's such a good card. It's hard not to put it into your decks, especially since it's customizable. It's a good way to sink XP into a very useful card without having to take out other things. Okay, that's about it for, I think, this video of deck retrospectives. Thank you for watching. I'm going to do another one of these next week where I look at some standalone decks that I've built. But I just kind of overall want to give you a flavor of what I've been playing with recently and why some of these slightly unconventional builds are still quite effective. It depends on the player count. It depends on your teammates. I think these skill-heavy builds that you saw here, especially for Silas, are really good. I think they can do a lot for Silas in particular because he can, well, we were using the Min's ability, but also turning through the deck was even not that difficult with no Unrelenting in the deck. So I'll see you next week with a little bit more of some deck retrospectives.